Before I begin, I do want to apologize. I do have a bit of a cough, so if I do mute my mic, and that's why. But with that said, I'd like to begin. Hello everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Max Srama, and I'm presenting the development of a cybersecurity capability maturity model. So what exactly is C2M2? Well, C2M2 stands for Cybersecurity Capability Maturity Model. It is a web app in which its main purpose is to strengthen an organization's cybersecurity infrastructure. It allows an organization of all types to enhance its cyber posture and consistently measure cyber capabilities. With that, with that information, they could share knowledge and prioritize actions and investments. C2M2 is designed with an accessible user interface that guides the user to its many tools and functions for self-evaluation. PNNL developed the website and is currently hosting the C2M2 server, and the website code runs on React, a JavaScript library used to build user interfaces and incorporates the cascading style CSS computer language for structuring the user interface. So now, what exactly is a maturity model? Well, the way in which self-evaluation is done is from a maturity model system. The overall purpose for a maturity model is to represent the progression of capabilities in a particular discipline. The maturity model is a set of characteristics, attributes, indicators, or patterns that represent capability and progression. The model consists of the most up-to-date practices and includes codes of practice from various other disciplines. To measure an organization's progression of maturity in a certain cybersecurity practice, the maturity model provides a scale from 0 to 3 called Maturity Indicator Levels, or MIL for short. The user determines and selects a value from this MIL scale depending on their organization's current state as it pertains to that practice. So now that we have a general idea of what a maturity model is, we'll move on to a usage of C2M2. The website is designed to be an easy-to-use and accessible tool. Users must first request a password and be given access to a tool in order to fully access the website. There, users will proceed through the tool and complete self-assessment. Once that self-assessment process is complete, a descriptive scoring report is generated that gives feedback required to evaluate gaps in the organization's cybersecurity practices. The report provides a summary-level depiction of performance relative to a model and shows practice-level status implementations. So an example approach an organization can take is to perform a self-evaluation, analyze identified gaps, prioritize and plan those gaps, and then implement those plans in whatever way they best see fit. So C2M2 was officially released to the public in 2012 and ever since has had 3 major updates. Changing technology, threats, and security approaches made these model refinements necessary. Also, thanks to received feedback from hundreds of energy sector stakeholders, these updates were possible. These include more than 100 public comments spanning 170 cybersecurity practitioners from different energy sector organizations. It needs to be emphasized that all data generated and recorded using the tools, such as user data and reports, are not collected by or stored on the web server. This practice is to respect the user's privacy, but also maintain current cybersecurity practices. This means that all data is locally stored, so it is highly recommended to regularly save progress using the save function available in the tool, since all data is, of course, stored on a local computer. The report may contain sensitive information, so it is highly encouraged to have it reviewed by participants and protected accordingly. The model is designed to be flexible, so this means that we could use the database and framework and adapt it for different variations of a tool. So some examples of this flexibility are 2 releases that I had the pleasure to work on during this internship, and they are called TRMM and C2M2 Nuclear. TRMM is short for Transmission Resilience Maturity Model, and it was originally released in 2019, and TRMM provides the specific needs for individual electric transmission system utilities to evaluate their transmission resilience programs. This is done by, of course, using the original C2M2 framework, but instead of revolving around just cybersecurity, which C2M2 does, the focus instead is transmission resilience for transmission organizations. Overall, resilience in this case is the ability to endure different kinds of shock and survive or readily bounce back from that. The TRMM is designed to be used alongside with a C2M2 to benchmark both cybersecurity and transmission resilience programs, but one can't be fully used to fully encompass the other or replace. So like C2M2 should be used for cybersecurity analysis, and TRMM, of course, for resilience. There was also a request for a nuclearized version of a model. So in response, PNNL is developing the cybersecurity capability maturity model nuclear, or C2M2 nuclear for short. The initiative for C2M2 nuclear was led by the Department of Energy Office of International Nuclear Security, INS for short. C2M2 nuclear enhances C2M2's methodology and framework for the needs of nuclear missions and nuclear materials. Just like how any organization may use C2M2 to evaluate and benchmark their cybersecurity programs, C2M2 nuclear functions very similarly by focusing more on nuclear cybersecurity initiatives. The current state of continued development is that developers at PNNL continually receive and act upon received feedback from stakeholders and project initiatives. The current version of a C2M2 nuclear tool is available for pilot testing and open to stakeholder feedback. The project manager, Clifford Glantz, traveled to Vienna in June of this year to announce the project's anticipated release and that the tool is currently open for access requests. In order to make the tool widely accessible to the public, informative guides are provided to help users navigate the tool effectively. All variations of C2M2 provide user instruction guides in the Resources tab of the tool. These extensive documents contain recommendations on using the tool and step-by-step instructions on navigating the tool. For the release of C2M2 nuclear, developers incorporated C2M2's methodology for the guides and modified the content to fit the nuclear landscape. The guides are currently up for review and will be readily available once it's released. C2M2 nuclear is also anticipating receiving requests from organizations all around the globe. To prepare for this, I personally was assigned a translation guide for professional translators to complete. In order to have everything necessary for translators, code was taken from a database, and I personally edited to include words that needed translation. So code that didn't need translation was, of course, removed. This guide encompasses the entirety of the C2M2 nuclear website, so to make sure that non-English speaking countries may access the tool. And with that, we have already received feedback from the UAE, and this step would be convenient for all to continue using the tool conveniently. It needs to be emphasized that an organization still needs to request and get approved by the DOE to fully access a website. This measure is taken to make sure that adversary countries of the United States do not have free access to the tool. I was able to also contribute an accessibility issue with TRMM by checking that the color contrasts on the website meet the standard for those with color blindness on the new management priorities tool. And then since 2012, DOE has responded to more than 2,400 requests for C2M2 from energy sector partners that are adapting the model. These requests, for example, come from energy, informational technology, and other government sectors. As shown, the C2M2 landscape is ever expanding and has the flexibility to be adaptable for any organization. If more specific needs must be met, PNNL may readily use the framework to make different variations of the model. The overall goal for each maturity model is to evaluate and benchmark its relative practices, helping organizations of all kinds prioritize actions and investments. Each maturity model is supposed to provide descriptive rather than prescriptive guidance. The continued goal for a project is to have every model up to date with its practices and push updates when necessary. These necessities come from initiatives with public-private collaborations, which include government programs and public comments across all critical infrastructure sectors. To ensure national security and economic vitality, the C2M2 landscape continues to work with energy sector partners consistently to guarantee the best outcome for all. And with that, I'd like to give special acknowledgement and thank you to the following people that helped me the most throughout this research and internship. From alphabetical order, Clifford Glantz, who was a project manager and gave me great advice and information on how to succeed at the lab and in this environment. So thanks to him. And of course, Gwen Kidd, who was my mentor for this internship. I'd like to personally thank you for your time and patience throughout my time here and your guidance, of course, you gave of coding and everything else. Joe Loftus, who's a programming team lead for the project, and he also at times would be like a mentor to me, and he would help me with difficulties with codes or whenever I needed more assignments for the project. And of course, Grayson McNally, who was an inter-coordinator And if it wasn't for her offering me this position, I probably wouldn't be here. And she also, of course, helped. Larissa Smith, who's a team coordinator, and she gave me a warm welcome to the lab and really helped me get settled into my workspace. And of course, everyone else I had the pleasure to work with on the Applied Decision Systems and Analytics team. You really made working here a great time, and that is everything for now. And any questions? Thank you for listening. And yeah.
Thank you, Maxim. The smiles and the appreciation at the end was incredible. It sounds like you had a really wonderful experience.
I did. It was a great environment, that's for sure.
Good. We love hearing that. Daniel has a great question. Have you come across NIST SP 800 to 171 for protecting CUI? And if so, how would you say that the 800 to 171 compares to the CMMC based on your observation? That question is in the chat box if you
have you come across. And so yeah, for I did not quite work on that, but I do recognize what NIST is. And for C2M2 version 2.1, we did incorporate both, I believe, but I have not much information about that because I've more worked on like accessibility issues and things like that. So yes.
Okay, that's fine. But to follow up, have you looked into any other frameworks during your development? And if so, which ones would you say seem the most mature to you?
Like what are frameworks? I like to say ones that seem mature, of course, was C2M2 original model, because that was what everything's really based upon, and it has the most consistent, has the most updates since its release, and it's been out for the longest. And it incorporates a lot of, from feedbacks consistently, like as previously mentioned, there's a lot of public comments in that. So yeah, that was probably most mature with that. And then also, I do see another question. With the flexibility of a model as mentioned, are there any plans for future maturity models? Yes, there is. I'm not gonna go specific with the names because they're long, complicated, but there are 3 that are currently our team is working on, and one of them is for product vendors and software engineers. Another one's for supply chains, and another one's for the chemical sector. So again, it'll be based off a C2M2 framework, and with that, it has great flexibility and could go to many other energy sectors with that. So yes, thank you for that. Thank you for the questions, and thank you everybody for your time.